happening, YouTube? Jenny Tong back again with another Q&A. This Q&A will be training, competition, recovery, nutrition, focused, all that good stuff. As you may have seen from the last YouTube video, I recently undertook a weight cut as I was leading up to the English Championships. On the previous YouTube video, I discussed, training around working a busy 9 to 5, fitting it all in. It's quite difficult working full time and trying to train to compete competitively. So I thought I would take this opportunity to answer any questions, queries that you may have. I talked a lot in the previous YouTube video about how I use Animal Pack's whey protein powders in my cut as well, particularly to satisfy my sweet tooth cravings by making kind of desserts. So I thought I would also take this opportunity to answer any other questions around how I use the supplements day to day, not just in a cut, but throughout that whole training block. The first question I received was about my training schedule. The first question was, given that you work a 9 to 5, how do you fit in your sessions? How long do they take? And how many sessions do you do per week? Working a 9 to 5 is tough. And even when I didn't work a 9 to 5, I worked very long hours as a freelancer. And I always used to say I had a lot of respect for people who worked 9 to 5, had other adult responsibilities and still turned up for the gym. I think it's very easy when you're a quote-unquote elite athlete to self-flagellate about how hard you train and about the demands on your body, but we often underestimate how tough it is for the, again, quote-unquote average Joe to train hard and excel professionally and have a personal and social life. So going on to the question, I struggle. I'll be honest, I struggle. It's exhausting. It's exhausting. I do a 3-hour round trip to work. So by the time I get to training at the end of the day, I'm slightly dead behind the eyes. So it's paramount that I make sure I fuel well and that I am mindful of which days I decide to train, which takes me on to the second part of the question. My training weeks aren't necessarily consistent because it depends very much on what I'm doing for work. So I work in project management. Some days I'm working from home, some days I'm out on site, sometimes I'm working in London at shared office spaces. So depending on how my week looks will depend on when I train, which session I do, based on my energy levels. I try to get in around 4 to 5 sessions a week. Honestly, sometimes it is 2 or 3 sessions, again depending on the week, because it's just not viable. So I try and operate on a minimum effective dose mindset of, I'm an adult, I have responsibilities. I would love to put all of my eggs into that training basket, but I can't. I have to compartmentalize my days. I have to prioritize, and sometimes training isn't the priority. I don't know if that really answers the question. I hope it does. 4 to 5 days a week on average, sometimes 2 to 3 days a week, energy levels depending. And within that as well, when it comes to my energy levels, I try and be mindful of which days I use pre-workout and which days I use the energy chews, because I think I've mentioned this before. It was either possibly on an Instagram Q&A I did. The pre-workout is fantastic. However, if I train at say 6 p.m. after work or 6:30 by the time I actually get onto the gym floor, it's I can't really have a pre-workout at that point because then I won't sleep. So I on those days I use the energy chews, and I find them really, really helpful for giving me a little bit of a boost without then impacting my ability to get to sleep. Which leads me on to the next question. What do you do for recovery? How many hours do you sleep? So this one, I'll be honest, my sleep isn't great at the moment, and I'm hoping that's a for now, not a forever thing. Life has been a little bit turbulent this year, and it's just affected my central nervous system quite a lot. And I put my hands on my chest because I often feel like I'm very pent up, and I feel that on an evening. I struggle to wind down. I'm thinking of a million things at once, and yeah, it just means it takes me a long time to get to sleep. And so I don't even want to say how many hours of sleep I average, but let's just say, I wear a Whoop. I track my sleep, my recovery, my training sessions, etc. And it's rare that I'm in the green, shall we say, for my sleep. I'm often in the red, mostly in the red. So I don't average a great deal. I don't tend to get a lot of sleep, which obviously then impacts my quality of training and overall recovery. Outside of sleep, nutrition, hugely important. Hydration also. Anybody who knows me personally knows that I am not great at remembering to stay hydrated, so I actually have reminders on my phone. I have an hourly reminder in big capital letters saying drink water. Sorry, my phone died. Anyway, back to the question on recovery. So yes, hydration, nutrition, obviously, sleep. I'm in a huge sleep deficit, which is something that I am really going to try and work on in the new year. On top of that, general recovery. So I train at a gym that has a sauna, so I try and sauna 2 times a week. And sports massages. Now, sports massages are something that I definitely let slip and felt the consequence. So seeing physios, getting physical therapy is incredibly important. For me personally, it makes the world of difference. I can't tell you how much I've noticed the change in my body over the past few years. As I've started to get older, I don't recover as well. Things ache for longer, so ensuring that I am giving myself the best opportunity to recover by seeing a massage therapist is quite high up in my priority list. So on the days that I don't train, I will try and book in a session with either a physio or a massage therapist. Next question. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? I have no idea. I'll be honest, I have no idea. And for the first time in my life, I have no idea. I guess this isn't really a training question, but it is, because sport has been my life for a long time, and I started taking a bit of a step back from elite sport a couple of years ago. My life has changed a lot over the past few years, and I always had a plan. From being about 16, have always been like a 5-year plan person, but then I would have a plan A, plan B, plan C, and that always helped give me structure and direction. But for the first time ever, I feel like I don't have a plan, and that is representative of a lot of the changes that have happened in my life, and not necessarily feeling directionless, but recognizing that there is a world of opportunity out there, and I guess being a little bit overwhelmed by adulthood and all that is, all that could be. So I really want to take some time again in the new year to sit with myself and decide what I want from my life. Not just in the long term, but kind of short term for the next 5 years, and create some structure to give myself the best opportunity to achieve any goals that I may have. Next question. What is the training focus for each lift for your next training block? Starting with the snatch, I've noticed that I'm not finishing my pull very well. In weightlifting, you kind of have to look at the first critical fault rather than looking at where the lift starts going wrong. So you look a stage before. I've noticed I've started to lean back in my extension and I'm moving away from the bar. So one thing I really want to focus on for the next block is actually getting stronger in that mid-thigh position, so that as the bar comes into my hip crease, I am much more controlled as I then go from the power position into that extension, rather than offsetting the load by trying to lean back, which then obviously pushes the bar away from me. My hamstrings obviously require quite a lot of strength work at the moment in order to help me hold that position for longer, which will then help me get into a better position when it comes to extending. Then for the clean, I have a tendency of catching the bar on my toes. There are several reasons for this, which I won't necessarily go into at the moment. However, it is a problem. I don't make my life easy by doing that. So a key focus for me on the cleans going into 2026 is ensuring that I'm landing on flat feet, but in doing so, ensuring that I'm holding tension in the right place to allow me to catch that bounce and then drive straight up, as opposed to what happens at the moment. Because I am not used to catching things on flat feet, it tends to push me back into my heels, which then causes me to have to do a double bounce. And because cleans out my strongest lift, I then have to fight to stand the clean. Not helpful. Then onto my jerk. So a couple of years ago, I fully ruptured the ACL on my left leg, which is my back leg. It's my stabilizing leg. And then a year later, I partially tore the MCL on the same leg, which essentially meant that my jerk went from being my strongest and most confident lift to a lift that really got into my head for obvious reasons. And as a byproduct of that, I jerked less, I lost a lot of confidence, and now when it comes to jerking, I really feel the weight on my chest because I've been jerking less and not as heavy. Pre-ACL injuries, I would really grind out a clean, I would really struggle, and then I would stand there with the bar on my chest and I was not worried, I was not concerned. It didn't feel heavy because my jerk was so much stronger than my clean. I was quite confident that I would then be able to jerk it. However, now when I stand a clean and I have to work for it, I stand with the bar on my chest and I think, oh my gosh, this feels really heavy. And that really knocked my confidence then to be able to execute the jerk as efficiently and as effectively as I know I can. I can see in my dip, my positions are off. In my extension, I tend to overcompensate by leaning back or just not driving through, not following through with the extension as confidently as I know I should be. And a lot of that comes down to obviously extending on that leg where there's no ACL and a history of MCL injury and some psychological anxiety, apprehension around landing with that back leg. So spending time rebuilding confidence, strengthening all of the ligaments around the ACL will be really, really important to help instill that confidence. Next question. Do I do weightlifting seminars? Yes, I do. I have been running weightlifting seminars for 8 years now, I believe. I thoroughly enjoy weightlifting seminars. I try and be as detailed as possible. For those of you who don't know, in a previous life, I was a coach for British weightlifting. So I was the regional pathway coach for about 4 years. I then went on to coach the national youth team and I ran a weightlifting club in Sheffield for 6 to 7 years. So I have coached recreational gym goers and weightlifters from community level to elite for a long time now. I like to think I come with a breadth of knowledge and experience that isn't just limited to my own experience as an athlete. Next question. What is your pre-comp routine, both the night before and day of comp? Okay, so I'll start from the night before. I actually have a night before comp routine / tradition. I have a small glass of red wine and some dark chocolate, which was introduced to me by my first ever coach as a way of just helping me kind of settle and relax, and like just have a little bit of what I like the night before rather than being really in my head. And because they're both also diuretics and I started off as an under 53 kilo lifter, it did something for me psychologically where I was like, okay, do you know what, I'm relaxing with a small glass of wine, I can have a bit of chocolate, but also they would help me then make weight in essence, which is, you've got to be really careful to not have too much, which I have done in the past, but that is my comp night routine, tradition. And then the morning of, so weightlifting, being a weight class sport, unlike other weight class sports, we have a very short period of time between our weigh-in and competing. We only have 2 hours. So the weigh-in is an hour long. And so if you're the last person on the list, you might actually, you know, if weigh-in starts at 10, you might only get weighed in at 11:15. So then your competition starts at 12, you don't actually have that much time to refuel. So I'll weigh in, I'll then refuel. Refuel for me tends to be breakfast food. I will tend to go and get some eggs on toast, some bacon with it, or salmon. While that might not be optimal pre-comp food, the thing for me is it's psychological. I associate that food with a normal day, which helps me then not overthink it and not stress. Again, this is all my experience, this is all my preference. I know some athletes are a lot more stringent with what they eat before a competition, but for me it comes down to what is going to help me psychologically relax and be present, as opposed to just being hyperfixated on eating oats and a banana, like slow release carbohydrates, all of that stuff. Probably better ways to go about it. But I know what works for me. I know what helps me settle into comp mode, and that is actually not overthinking it. Once I've had that, I will let it settle, chill for a little bit, and then I will go into the back room, the warm-up area. I'll do my warm-up, which you've probably seen on some of my workout videos. It tends to be quite consistent. I don't tend to veer too much from that warm-up unless I have specific aches, pains, injuries, niggles, things like that that need some time and attention. I'll then start sipping my pre-workout and start snatching. I try to time my pre-workout so that I'm finishing my pre-workout as I'm finishing my snatches. And the reason being is that I struggle the most with the clean and jerks, and that is where I find that I actually need the energy and I need that kick and that boost from the pre-workout. So essentially when I'm kind of at pre-opener weight is when I get that, you know, buzz from the pre-workout so that I go out like ready and raring to go. What I don't want is to guzzle the pre-workout too early and then start crashing by the time I get to the clean and jerks, or, you know, have missed that window of getting the benefits of that pre-workout. So I'll sip my pre-workout. So I'll try and time it to get the peak at the heaviest point of the competition, which is, you know, my clean and jerks. This next question is really sweet. I know you've had a tough year and training and competition has been hard. What's one piece of advice you would give to someone in your position? Yeah, it's been a tough year, both personally, professionally, and then how that's impacted me and my training and my competitions. I guess the one thing I would say to people is that whilst things are and feel heavy, life goes on. Recognise your struggles, but actually not be a victim of that is incredibly important, because we are capable of so much, but it is so easy to wallow and to dwell, and I've definitely done that. But really ask yourself, like, how is this serving me? Struggle is part of the process of life, and using struggle to fortify yourself, to become stronger mentally and emotionally, and utilize that to be an overall stronger version of yourself in and out of the gym. If you don't seek to pull yourself out of that hole, then you will just keep digging. That's hard, and it requires discipline. It requires really looking intrinsically deep within yourself and asking yourself, how is this serving me? How is being dominated by all of these negative feelings actually serving me? That's no easy task. It's incredibly confronting, but the reality is that we're only human. But ultimately, we can only grow if we seek to. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't teach how to drink. You can know what all of the right things are and still not do them. And the only person who is responsible for your outcomes is you. You have free will, you have autonomy. You are allowed to recognize that you're in a difficult spot. But you also have to recognize that it is only temporary if you allow it to be. If you allow struggle and strive to be the headline and the narrative of your story and your journey, then you will always be limited by that. And you will only have yourself to blame. We can't blame the world and its forces for dealing us a crappy hand. We can only play the hand that we're dealt. I say this from experience because at several points in my life I've been dealt crappy hands, 2025 being one of them. But ultimately, what you do with that hand is what matters. My one piece of advice to someone, if I was going to summarize, is to keep going.